Hello and welcome everybody. I got the cue, we are live now. I wanted to welcome everyone tuning in to our Yamaha Join Ask Play, our deep dive into the world of DTX. Very happy to be here. We're broadcasting from our Yamaha Canada headquarters here in Toronto. My name is Ryan Hamilton. I'm the product marketing manager for Yamaha Drums, acoustic and DTX for the Canadian market, and yeah, we're excited to be able to present this this webinar to everybody today. I do need to mention this is our third crack at this, so we have our fingers crossed. We're excited to give this another shot. We've had a couple previous, we had a technology issue, we had some other things going on, but we were committed and dedicated to making this happen. So really appreciate everyone's patience and all the people that submitted questions, which we've gotten some great feedback, and a lot of people with varying questions that we're certainly going to try to get to today. So we're excited. The idea of this was we wanted to give an outlet to our customers, our dealers, our end users, the opportunity to submit some questions and be able to give you some information right from the source. And with the electronics and technology, there's a wide variety of questions and different uses. People are using electronic drums and technology in a wide range of ways. So we're pleased to be able to give you guys the exact information and provide an opportunity to ask the experts and the specialists directly. So to that point, what we did is we hooked up with a colleague that we're very excited to work with again, for me, and Mr. Simon Edgoose, who we describe as the DTX the DTX expert. And Simon has a wealth of knowledge that he's been prepared to share with you. So I'm going to start off by just giving just a quick background on Simon and some of his credentials as being the DTX guru. And we'll bring him on momentarily. We'll get right into it. But Simon is a drummer, programmer, self-proclaimed gear geek, and an industry advisor who's been using electronic drums since the age of 10. After studying music in London, he began a busy tour playing, touring, recording. Over that time, he realized he was actually more interested in the equipment side of the industry than the performing side. And now Simon finds himself regularly advising or programming for some major worldwide acts. U2, Kylie Minogue, The Who are just some amongst many others to his credit. And advising the musical instrument companies of all sizes on technology and how that technology can be used for the role of the drummer. So he can generally be found playing with computers and electronic drum equipment in all sorts of situations, sessions to gigs to theaters, and trying to tell drummers how their lives could be improved by allowing just a little bit of technology into their lives, which I will point out is still in a lot of instances there's a barrier there. A lot of times people are hesitant to allow the technology into their everyday drumming. So Simon has certainly tried to bridge that gap. Simon's very proud of the fact that his ideas, inventions, and suggestions are used by thousands of drummers every day, and even though he has a reputation for electronics, he does like to point out that he can be found playing an acoustic kit from time to time, although you might not see that online all that much, but he certainly does. So we are very proud. I'm very happy to have Simon on board to help us with this, and without further ado, let's bring Simon on, and we'll start tackling all of these questions that we've had submitted. So, Simon, are you there? Do we have Simon?
I'm here, Ryan. I hope you can hear me okay.
I can hear you perfectly, yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
So far, so good.
Well, we got through about 30 seconds with both of us.
Exactly.
That's a good start.
Exactly.
Good.
So thank you for being here yet again, and hopefully this runs smoothly. But I appreciate your the time that you put into this, your acceptance and willingness to handle a lot of these specific questions that we're going to get into. So thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you for asking me. It's great. I get to answer lots of interesting questions. I find them interesting. So, well, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I'm sure everyone appreciates what you do for for the industry. I'm assuming do you get peppered with questions on the regular through your website, which I should mention for anyone interested in seeing some of Simon's stuff and finding him online. edruminfo.com is where you can find his website. For again, it's a wealth of knowledge for anybody interested in electronic drums, and certainly our DTX products.
And also, if you find me on YouTube as well, I've done lots of videos covering different aspects of DTX and lots of other things. So
that's actually a very good point. The content that Simon has put out that can be found on the Yamaha, the official Yamaha YouTube channel, EAD 10 videos, DTX Pro videos, DTX videos for DTX 6 kits. There are tons and tons of short, very consumable videos that you've put a lot of work into. That I'm sure get referred to, quite a bit when people are finding out, one specific little task to get through. So yeah, those videos are fantastic.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Cool.
So what we did when we were planning this is, my first question to Simon was asked him if he would be able to compile some of the most commonly asked questions for the world of electronic drums and DTX, and he was very quite easily able to put together what we coined Simon 7. 7 of the common problems, general questions on electronic drums. So Simon, if you want to take it from here and dive into those specific 7, because some of the questions that were submitted from our users directly related to some of these more common ones that you get asked regularly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to start off with quite a big question, and I promise it'll get easier after this. Okay, so the first question is this. Okay, let's just swap some cameras. What single thing can electronic drummers do to dramatically improve their playing experience? And I've sort of combined Darren Schofield's question and also the staff at Just Drums Toronto. Hi guys. So what single thing can drummers do to make their electronic experience better? That's really easy to answer. Okay. Everyone who's watching this, and you, Ryan, and anyone who plays drums, we all play differently. Okay, we all use different sticks. We all have different muscle makeup. We might hit hard, might hit light. We play different styles. Okay, and so every electronic kit that comes from the factory, and it doesn't matter the make. This is all electronic kits. They have to have a few settings. General settings as far as the triggers are concerned, just so anyone can sit down and can play it. But because we all play differently, we all need different settings. We all need our electronic kits to be set up just for us. So the best thing you can do is this. You need to look at this when the graphics come back. Hang on, let's go back here. This is what we like. When things happen. There we go. Right, okay. So you need to look at your gain, your threshold, and your velocity curve. Now, instantly, that sounds really boring, okay? But it's very, very important. So I'm just going to very, very quickly go over why you've got to do this. What is your gain? Your gain makes sure that your module, whatever module it is, matches your loudest and quietest notes, so that when you're playing quietly, the module is playing quietly. When you're playing loud, the module is playing loud. That might sound really obvious, but it's not. You need to sort this out because it will make a big difference. Okay, so what this is you need to get it so that when you hit your pad as hard as possible, the module tells you that it's playing its loudest. And that's, you will see a figure inside. If I go into the module I've got here, which is DTX Pro X, if I go into trigger settings, If I go into pads type, if I scroll down to where it says gain, what I'm looking for is that figure in the top right-hand corner, which says 17, if you can see it, to go up to 127. 127 is the maximum volume for electronic drums. So you just need to get it so that when you hit your pad as hard as you can, it goes up to 127. And you need to do that for every single pad, because every single pad is different. That's stage one. Stage two, threshold. Now, threshold is this. Threshold, or, well, let's just go with this. Threshold. This makes sure that the module only plays the quiet notes that you want and ignores everything else. Now, this comes back to the question that the guys at Just Drums in Toronto asked, because they asked about how do you get around crosstalk and double triggering. We've all had that. Crosstalk is when you hit one thing and another pad makes a noise. Double triggering is when you hit a pad and it plays twice rather than once. If you can sort out your threshold or your minimum level in Yamaha Talk, that just sorts everything out. Got a little video which might help to explain this. We'll have a look. So, right, there we go. Every pad can only play a maximum volume and a minimum volume, and we all play at lots of different volumes between us. Our backbeats are our loud notes, our mid-range notes are our normal playing, and our ghost notes are our quiet notes. But underneath all this is background noise, and that's when your bass player walks across the stage. If your bass player walks across the stage and he sets off your bass drum or your tom, then that's not good. So we need something to ignore that, and that's what threshold is. Anything below the threshold or minimum level is ignored, okay? I told you this would be technical. I apologize now. Anything below this level, really quiet notes, is ignored. But as soon as it goes over the threshold or the minimum level, you hear a note, okay? I'm going to go back to this now. So that's one thing. And then the last thing, very briefly, is velocity curves. Velocity curves are this. Okay, velocity curves are a feel thing, okay? This tells this is you telling the module how quickly you want it to go from quiet to loud when you're playing. Now this is different for every single person, every single pad. If there's one thing I can tell you to do, is just go to your electronic kit and play around with the velocity curves or the curves for each pad until you find one which feels right for you. Okay, there's much more we can talk about that, but we're not going to now because we could spend hours doing this. Okay, so that was a really heavy question just to start. I promise everything else will be easier from now on. Okay, does that make sense, Ryan?
That makes sense to me. The one thing I was going to say is, you know, I think I see questions online, a lot of misinformation on what you just talked about, the velocity curve. You know, the curve as a terminology does get thrown around, but for your point being, like, there is no right setting, you know, and there is no specific number that your curve should be at. It's subjective, and it's to each player and what they're doing.
Yeah, what often happens, and when I'm talking to electronic drummers, is they say, "Oh, I sat down at my friend's kit and it felt brilliant. Right. He's got the same kit as me, but it felt fantastic. Why is it different?" And it's normally because their friend had sat down and messed about with the velocity curves and just found something which felt right to them. And it makes a massive difference. So even if this is, you know, not making sense at the moment, just sit down, have a look through, and it can make the biggest difference to how your electronic kit feels when you play it.
I think it's great. Great information.
Cool, excellent. Right, okay, I told you it'd be easier from now on. So, next question is, here we go. Which is better, TCS or mesh? And this is sort of based on a question from Gary James. Thank you, Gary, for the question. Right, okay, now, what are we going to say now? Everybody knows mesh heads. Mesh heads are sort of industry standard. Okay, it's people think they've been around since the 90s, the 1990s, but actually they've been around since the 1890s. I found a patent for a mesh head for a practice head from 1896, I think it was. I can't remember. So mesh heads are nothing new. Mesh heads. There's a mesh head on one of Yamaha's new pads, so it's nice and quiet. We can tighten it, and it looks like a drum. And drummers like this because they can tighten it. So that's one thing. So that's mesh, and then TCS is. If I just do this, it's like I prepared it earlier. TCS is this. This is Yamaha's textured cellular silicon material. It's white. It's very comfortable to play. It's quiet. But TCS and mesh are totally different from each other, and they have a very different feel. So there isn't really a which is better or which is worse. They're just different. Okay. If you are used to playing mesh, then mesh is probably the best way forward. If you are used to playing an acoustic kit, then possibly TCS is the best way forward. Right, so that's the short answer, and I'm just going to go into a little bit of detail. I promise I'll make it quick. Right, so drums, acoustic drums. If we play acoustic drums, if we hit an acoustic drum, it does this. Okay, so we hit the drum and the stick bounces off it because there's air trapped inside. Okay, some of the air can come out of the air hole, but it's mostly the air inside which is pushing the stick back. Now, a lot of people will go, that's not right, it's how tight the head is. But if you think about it, you can loosen off the head and you can still play pretty fast on it. So you can also do this. If you take the bottom head off a drum and play it, suddenly it feels totally different. It's much harder to play because all the air is coming out of the drum. So air is very, very important to how an acoustic drum feels when we play it. And TCS, which is Yamaha's system, actually works on air as well. There's air bubbles inside the silicon. So when you hit it, the air bubbles squash down, and it's the air inside the air bubbles which pushes the stick back. So TCS is actually much more similar to an acoustic drum, more than mesh, because mesh doesn't hold in any air. Mesh has got holes in it, lets the air through. So what makes mesh bouncy is just how tight the head is. Okay, so each one feels very different. Mesh feels different to TCS. TCS and mesh feel very different to rubber. Rubber gets a really hard time. People think that rubber is cheap and nasty, but actually rubber is very, very quick to trigger. It's the fastest one to trigger. So from when you hit the rubber pad to when it generates a signal in the drum module is actually the fastest one. So rubber is actually good. TCS feels more acoustic-like, and mesh feels like mesh. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me entirely. And actually, I like you pointing out maybe the reputation that rubber gets. You know, I think there's just kind of an assumption that the market has generated that, you know, mesh is the cheapest one, or that's the one for entry-level players or lowest. But in terms of latency and triggering, and you know, just feel working around a kit, there's nothing wrong with rubber pads.
No, and also the other thing is that if you look at drummers who are doing big tours with lots of electronics, so in the UK, I'm thinking of people like Andy Gangadine and Tom Meadows, who you might not know over there, but they're big touring drummers. They use a lot of rubber pads because they are so fast to trigger. So you'll see you'll still see a lot of rubber pads on really big kits on big events.
I've seen very similar example. Chris Johnson, Yamaha,
Yeah.
a Yamaha USA artist, currently touring the world with Lady Gaga. He's got, I think it's two, TP70. There might even be TP65 pads. He has a couple TCS silicone pads as well in his rig, but he's got two black rubber pads right there that I think are being tethered to a DTX M12. And
Yeah.
I mean, and that's quite an endorsement right there. That the gentleman you just mentioned, and those types of stages are still you still can find rubber pads in that application.
Yeah, yeah. They've had a lot of bad press, but as far as I'm concerned, rubber pads are great.
Love it. You've misspelled, you've taken away the rumors on that then.
Excellent. Okay, right. So what I'm going to do next, let's have a look. Next question. I think let's do this one. Right, here we go. Why doesn't Yamaha build a full-sized acoustic or full acoustic-sized pad kit yet? Right. Okay, well, that's really easy to answer. Okay, so you've seen lots of full-size pad kits on the market. Well, Yamaha build all the parts for it. The only thing that Yamaha don't make is the mesh heads. And you could go and buy a stage custom kit. You could go and buy some DT50 triggers. You could go and buy a DTX Pro X, or seeing as I have one by my feet, a DTX Pro module. And some cymbal pads, some PCY cymbal pads, RHH hi-hat pad, and you can build exactly what you want in the sizes that you want. The only thing which Yamaha doesn't make for that is the mesh heads. So when it comes to mesh heads, I said earlier that there are some really good feeling mesh heads. Don't just go for the ones which everyone online tells you to go for. Everyone says, oh, buy 3-ply heads, they feel much better. Okay, they might to you, but to me, a thick single-ply mesh head feels really realistic. It's louder than other mesh heads, but it feels much more realistic. So there's so many different options as far as mesh heads are concerned. You can go and try a few, buy the ones that feel best for you. You might find you need something different on the bass drum and the snare drum to the toms. It's completely down to you. But Yamaha makes everything so that you can go and make your acoustic sized kit. So what you would do, you'd buy your stage custom, you'd put mesh heads on it, you'd put triggers on it, you'd connect the triggers to the module, you'll have the PCY cymbal pads like I've got here on the stands, and you would have something that 99% of the audience thought was an acoustic drum kit, but it's an electronic kit, and you've got all the benefits of DTX without the noise. Brilliant. It just works really, really well. So that's my answer to that. Is that cool?
Good with me. Yep. No, I think that explains it. Perfectly. The options are there, and for anyone who wants to kind of create their own, hybrid kit like that, it's very good, and you wouldn't need to buy an additional, kit in that. In that example, or an additional set of shells if they were packaged, as a DTX kit. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So it just the choice is up to you. You can then choose your own, whatever drums you want, whatever mesh heads you want, whatever triggers, whatever module, and you've got many more options than just what is sold to you in one box. So that's what I'd say for that. Right. Okay. So then next question is probably this one. What can drummers do to get a more realistic sound when using electronic kits live or for recording? Now, this is sort of a mix of what Murray and Paul said. So let me just read you what Murray and Paul said when I can find it right. So Paul said, how do you deal with sound techs? I think this is the right one. I'm guessing. Yeah, okay. Yes, I'm just checking it's the right Paul. How do you deal with sound techs who want separate lines for everything? And Murray said, here we go. I love my DTX kits, but I've always found the hi-hat volume to be quieter in relation to the other drums. And then he explains what he does to get around that. Now, if you've noticed, there's lots of producers who are out there. I'm thinking of people like Butch Vig, who are drummers as well. And drummers make really good producers. But one of the first things that drummers do when they get more into production is they start concentrating on what makes a good drum sound. Now, if you want to hear what your electronic kit should sound like to the audience, then just turn on the radio and listen to a commercial track, because you'll hear the kick, you'll hear the snare, you'll hear the hi-hat really quietly, but normally covered with a shaker on top. You'll hear the crash cymbals, and you'll probably never hear the ride cymbal, okay? Because that is what sort of the audience expects when listening to commercial music. We drummers, when we mix our own kits, we mix the cymbals much too loud, we mix the hi-hat much too loud, and we mix the toms really loud as well. If you want to mix your drum kit so it sounds right in a track, it needs to be kick and snare, a little bit of hats, and a little bit of crash, nothing else. So Murray, if you're finding that the hi-hats are quiet, just record yourself and just make sure that it sounds right when you record it, because when we're sitting behind our acoustic drum kits, we hear the hi-hats really loud because they're only that far away from our ears, and we hear the cymbals really loud because they're only, they're really close to our ears as well. So so it's nice and simple. Just think about how it sounds from the audience point of view. Okay.
Good with me. I knew there would be several questions relating to the live usage of electronic drums. I mean, that's something that certainly Yamaha, and I think there's been a growing demand for seeing more electronic kits on stage. Certainly the offerings that the electronic drum manufacturers have focused on, and the direction that some of the products have gone over the last couple of years, they know the capabilities and the features in some of these kits. I mean, our DTX 10 kit, case in point, adding the shells and increasing the focus on the aesthetics of the kit to make these look like beautiful instruments that guys behind them can feel inspired to play, and when you match that with the features of of some of the modules that you're starting to see more electronic kits come up in, and not necessarily big stages, but they could be small local bars. They provide a number of benefits that I think more and more drummers are coming around to and feeling more comfortable in bringing an electronic kit to a bar gig or a small theater or a small venue. So I was expecting that there would be some live use questions. So great to touch on those.
Yeah, so I mean, COVID obviously changed stuff. When we all went into lockdown, everyone got used to their electronic kits more and started after lockdown to use electronic kits more. But when you do use it live, just make sure that the mix is correct for the audience, not for you, not you as the drummer. Make sure it works for the audience. The audience don't want to hear the hi-hats and the cymbals really, really loud.
That's right.
And you often hear that. So that's very important stuff.
Good tip.
Cool. Okay, so next we have this one, I believe. Let's have a look. Can the DTX Pro and the DTX Pro X modules be used with VSTi plugins? Now, if you don't know what a VSTi plugin is, they're programs which go on your computer, and they got massive drum libraries, and you connect your electronic kit to your computer with a USB cable, and then you can use these massive drum libraries to record or do anything else. So VSTis are really popular. Apparently, one of the biggest selling music programs in Nashville is a drum VSTi, a very cheap drum VSTi, because it sounds great. So VSTis are another way that drummers can use their computers to provide the drum sounds. Now, when we were working on these kits, the Pro and the Pro X, the DTX8, DTX6 and DTX10, we got in touch with all the big VSTI builders, and we told them what was happening, and we gave them all the information they needed, and some of the companies even borrowed some kits so they could make sure that the DTX 6, 8 and 10 work perfectly with drum plugins. And if you go into all the major drum plugins now, you will find settings for DTX 8, DTX 6, DTX 10, so you can just you can connect your kit instantly and it will work straight out of the box. So the short answer is yes, you can. Okay?
Yeah, easy. Straight to the point.
Okay. Right. Then. Okay. This is a good one. This is a good one. Here we go. Can the DTX 6, 8 and 10 kits play backing tracks for live? Right. Simple answer, yes they can. So why would you want to use backing tracks live? Well, again, after lockdown, many bands started using backing tracks because it made them realize that they could make the band sound bigger by having strings and brass and whatever else and lots more sounds. But you can use the DTX Pro and the DTX Pro X modules to play backing tracks for you. So the DTX Pro has something called guide audio, which allows you to play stream some audio off a USB drive and have a click. And then the DTX Pro X module has something called live audio and guide audio as well. So you can actually play stereo backing tracks with a click, and you can have whatever you want in there. Backing singers, brass, orchestras. You've got to program it, but yes, you can do it. So you can make the band sound much bigger by using the DTX 6, 8 and 10 as well. Okay?
So Simon, on that last, to that last point, that's just saying that a drummer on stage with an electronic kit has full customizable control of anything backing track or other musician. You know, with the proper programming, he can get whatever he wants in stereo sound to, you know, accentuate or to help his comfort level on stage with an electronic kit.
Yeah, so it can get it in stereo with the Pro X, but in mono on the Pro module. Right. You might think mono, that's terrible. That's everything's in stereo now. But most big PAs are actually in mono because otherwise only half the audience who's closer to one speaker would only hear half the band. Right. So so I could very, very quickly I could do something like this if I just turn right. So if you see now, I'm on the recorder function. I've got this, which is a guide audio version. If I press the play button, I've got the click, but you haven't. Okay, so I can play along. So, so yeah, that's just an example of what you could do. You could have a nice stereo track or a mono track playing. You can be sitting there with a click, so you can augment the sound of your band by having backing tracks as well.
Excellent. Perfect.
Cool. Excellent. Okay. Right. Now, last question out of the 7 is this one. Let's go to this. Here we go. What can the DTX Pro and the Pro X module do that other modules cannot do? Okay. Right. So when we were working on the Pro and the Pro X modules, there's lots of stuff. They're ridiculously powerful modules, really, 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 really powerful modules. And they do lots of things that other modules do, but it does them all together in one module. So, for example, I can load multi-layer samples. I can load up to 120 samples onto one pad so that it sounds really, really, really uber realistic. So something like this. Let's go to here. So the snares off sound I'm just about to play is a sound which I've put in there. course, it helps if you plug in the pad from when you used it earlier. But so let me go to the overhead camera. Here we go. So you can get a nice sort of snares off sample. Well, that's just the one I've loaded. You can load in any sound you want. So you can take the sound from your the last recording session you did. You can record up to 120 samples. You can load them into the module, so you can make it sound like your drum kit if you want to do that. That's one thing. Playing backing tracks like we've just talked about. Being able to control the acoustics of the kit and where the kit is being played. So if I just go over to this kit here, right, so this is the black vinyl kit. This is one of the presets. And over here, I've got these things called kit modifiers. And kit modifiers allow me to change the sound instantly. If I just play this kit with all the kit modifiers turned off, you'll hear what it sounds like. Okay, so it doesn't sound particularly, it sounds okay, but it doesn't sound particularly exciting. But what I can do is this. If I add in some ambience, so that's the room sound from when these were recorded. I can add some compression, which is a dynamic effect, which squashes the dynamics, and I can add some other effects as well. This is exactly the same kit, but just by turning those knobs, it now sounds like this. So what I'm doing is I'm just changing the kit modifier sounds, the kit modifier knobs, and I can instantly just change the sound of the kit from making it small to making it big to making it compressed and punchy and in your face, or anything else you want. And you can do this really easily on the Pro and the Pro X just by using those three knobs. And that's without doing anything else. You can just do that in real time as you're playing, as I just did there. So between those few things, incredibly powerful.
I love that you just demoed the three kit modifiers, which do make those two modules extremely unique to what's out there. Now those three modules, which were introduced on on the E8010, kind of game-changing adjustment and enhancer tools that without changing your specific kit, or I mean the DTX Pro, you've got the faders for individual individual pads, but it's just such a cool example as to the limitless or endless possibilities of sound manipulation and adjustment that you can do just with those kit modifiers at the turn of a little dial, and then you can save those settings on on each user preset. You can record those settings, and even on in a backing track live or a live situation, you want a little compression added, or you want to boost the ambience on a certain setting. Those features are incredible.
Absolutely, works so well. So it's great that you can just do so much with just those three knobs. Unbelievable. Right. Okay, so that's the seven sort of the main questions that I get asked all the time. So now we're going to go a little bit more into specifics. Okay, so question 8. What we've got here is this. Let me just do this. There we go. Right, I think we should have this. There we go. Right. So this comes from Sean McConnell. Thank you, Sean, for the question. How do I add a kick trigger and 3 tom triggers to my DTX M12? Right, very good question. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what the M12 is, it's this. That's the M12. That's the DTX M12, the multi-pad 12. It's got 12 pads, 3 bar pads at the front and the back, 6 pads in the middle. It's got loads of sounds. It's unbelievably powerful. It's we could talk about it for weeks. There's just so much stuff. So how do you add triggers onto it? Well, on the back of the module, so if we go here, there are trigger inputs. And if we zoom in a bit, we can see there's one which is labeled 13, and then there's another which is labeled 14, 15, and 16, 17. If you plug a splitter cable into 14, 15, and 16, and 17, you can add up to 4 more pads. So that could be your 3 toms and your bass drum, or pads or triggers or anything else. It's up to you. So you could do it like this. So you could have 4 DT50 triggers, or DT50K as well. So you could have your 4 toms and your, 1 bass drum and your 3 toms. You could do it in lots of different ways. Sean, there's so much we could talk about this, that what I'll do is, if you want to email me direct, and I'll send you some stuff which should help make it a little bit easier. But yeah, the DTX M12 can easily handle bass drum and 3 tom triggers, and then you've got all the sounds internally, and you can also add in your own samples as well. So incredibly powerful. You'll have great fun with that, Sean. It'll be great. Okay, is that all cool?
Good with me. Yep. It's okay. Amazing. The only thing I would say about the M12 is been on the market for a while now, yet it has stayed unbelievably relevant and popular for a whole host of different applications, for guys just wanting to have a sound bank of just some effect sounds, percussion sounds. There's tons of world percussion sounds, Indian, Oriental sounds. So, but I'm continuously surprised as to how many different scenarios I see the M12 being used. It's amazing.
And also, I mean, places like in the West End in London and on Broadway, there's one particular show which uses M12 massively. There's quite a few shows which use M12s, but there's one in particular that starts with an H, and it's historical, that uses the M12 to a really, really big degree, and it relies on the M12. Cool. So every time it opens around the world, they've always got to have an M12 just because what it can do. So M12, love it, absolutely fantastic. Okay, right. So next question, number 9, something like this. Can I have multiple trigger settings for live shows? This comes from Brandy Sharp. Thank you, Brandy, for the question. Yes, you can. Why would you want that? Well, easy. If you've got something like the DTX Pro X, so here you have got 10 different trigger settings, and you can have different setups for different things. So you might have one setup which is for your acoustic triggers on an acoustic drum kit. You might have one for your mesh pads. You might have one for your TCS pads. You might have one for something else. It's completely down to you. And every single every single trigger setting, it can be different for every single pad, for every single setting. So you've got up to 10 on the DTX Pro X, but just like all of Yamaha's modules, once you've filled in everything and you've filled it up and you've used all the kits and everything else, you can just back it up to a USB drive, and then you can start again. So you can have, if you want to have 200 trigger settings, you can have 200 trigger settings. I don't think anyone's going to need that many, but you can do it. So yes, Brandy, you can on the DTX Pro X, you can do that. You've only got one trigger setting on the Pro module, but on the Pro X you've got 10, and then you can just back them all up and have as many as you want in the long term. Okay, is that cool?
Good with me. Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Next one. Okay. Is this number 10? I think we got a 10. Wow. Okay, let's go to number 10. If I use the individual outputs on the DTX Pro X module, I don't get the effects. How do I send them? All right, this comes from Roger. Thank you, Roger. Okay, so when you are using the DTX Pro X, you've got 8 individual outputs on the back. So you could have bass drum coming out of one, snare drum coming out of the others, toms coming out of 2 more. However you want to do it, you can decide. But the effects, the wonderful effects which you mess about with the kit modifiers, don't come out of the individual outputs. What do you do? Okay, really simple. So what you do is you use the master outputs from the module, and they have got all the effects on. So then you have the individual outputs, your kick, snare, toms, cymbals, whatever else, and you've got left and right, which are effects as well. So you've actually got 10 individual outputs, 8 for drums and 2 for effects. And then you're the front of house guy, can mix them how he wants to. And what Roger was saying on his question was, how do you get that in mono? Well, you just use one side of the stereo output, and then you've got all your effects in mono, and you've got all the individual channels as well. I hope that makes sense. If you're a sound guy, that will be a really useful thing, because then you can mix the kit however you want to. Okay, makes sense?
Answers well. Yep, that's good. I mean, that's a cool, a very unique or specific, live, application type thing, but something that, potentially a lot of people could be asking. That the fact that those effects are readily available, ambience, compression, whatever effect, they're going to want to know how they can, properly use that in, in a live setting. So that's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't lose anything by using the individual outputs. In fact, you gain something by giving the sound person much more scope to mix your drum kit sound. So really, really cool. So that's that one. Okay, so question 11. Which modules allow you to use your own samples? Now, I appreciate that for lots of companies, being able to add samples onto your electronic kit is sort of a novel thing. But Yamaha has been doing it for 20 years. I think since the DTX Stream 2S, which is probably the best part of 20 years ago, maybe, probably 2000-ish, you've been able to load your own samples into DTX modules. The only DTX module you cannot load your own samples into is the DTX 402, which is the sort of the entry model. But everything else, the DTX Pro, the DTX Pro X, the DTX 900, going back into older modules, DTX 900, 700, 502, DTX Stream 3, DTX Stream 2, all this sort of stuff. You can load your own samples in. So you can take the sound of Lars Ulrich's bass drum, or your snare drum, or the China cymbal that belongs to your neighbor that sounds really good. You can sample it and you can put it into your modules, and then when you hit the cymbal pad, the drum pad, you will get the sound that you've just loaded in. So samples are a really big thing in DTX world, and you've been able to do it for ages, and you can do it on all the modules. Okay, so I didn't get the name for that one. Whatever.
Was that
hang
Joel?
on. I might have been. Let's have a look. What was it? Here we go. Yes, it was. Well done. Well remembered. Thank you, Joel. Yes, all of them apart from the 402. So that's it.
It is a common question that a lot of people, get asked. Like, oh, can I load my own samples, whatever that is, sound effect, their own snare drum? That does get asked quite a bit. Yeah, totally. And weird things like explosions. For some reason, drummers love explosions. Why? Don't ask me why, but they want to load explosions into their DTXs or whatever, especially on the M12. Right. So that's samples. Right. So what's next? This is a really cool question. Now, this is what the question is. How does the material of the bass drum beater affect the response of the silicon bass drum pad? So that's from Ben. Thank you, Ben. Right, there's a couple of things here. One, there isn't a silicon bass drum pad. Okay, there's the KP95, which is the bass drum pad which comes with this. Don't think you can see it on here. No, you can't. It's underneath the tom. That's annoying. And that's got a rubber head, and then that comes with the DTX 6 and the DTX 8. And then with the DTX 10 kits, you get a larger KP125, which has got a mesh head on it. But where I think you're coming from, Ben, is you've got to be careful with mesh bass drum pads, bass drum heads, because felt beaters are not good for mesh bass drum pads. The friction tends to make them heat up and they will break. So what Yamaha have done on the KP125 bass drum pad is it comes with a
a pad already attached to the mesh head in the right place, so that you can use any beater you want and it's not going to damage the head. Okay, so that's really, really good. As far as the KP95, which has got the rubber head on it, which I personally think is the best feeling bass drum pad that Yamaha's ever made, you can use anything on it. It might mark the head a little bit, just as it would mark on a real drum head, but you can use anything. You can use plastic, you can use wood, you can use felt, completely down to you. So I think that's one. Does that make sense?
I think that's clear to me. Yep, the amount of options guys have nowadays with beaters, especially like dual-sided beaters. I mean, our Yamaha, FP 9500 is, an easy flip from the felt side to a hard plastic side. I've seen a lot of guys use wood beaters, an electronic kit that's for, just a little faster rebound. So there's lots of options that guys can use.
Absolutely. So it really depends on what feels right for you as a drummer. Okay, so that's that one. Now, this is a slightly more technical question. So let's just go for this one. Here we go. When creating or manipulating a sample to blend with your acoustic bass drum in the front of house mix, what are your tips to best EQ these types of sounds? Are there any universal tips? And that comes from, I've got this down as Topher. I think it might be Christopher, and the Chris bit got missed off. I'm not sure. So
it
is Topher. It is Topher. Okay,
I can
fantastic.
confirm that, yeah.
Right, okay. Thank you, Topher. I've never come across the name Topher before. That's brilliant. Okay, so this comes from Topher, and so what he's asking is, a lot of drummers will have their acoustic bass drums, and they will mic those normally. They'll put a mic on it, and they'll have it through the PA, and it'll sound great. But they will also have a trigger on the bass drum, and whenever they hit their acoustic bass drum, they will also trigger an electronic sound at the same time. And what that's for is just to give the bass drum more, whatever you want. It's just to make the bass drum sound bigger and massive. Certain styles of music, sort of metal and stuff like that, is much more common. But to be honest, most people who I've worked with on a big sort of stadium situation will trigger their bass drums anyway, just to give it a little bit more welly, as we would say, a little bit more oomph. So what you need to do is, if you're doing that, you need to listen to your acoustic bass drum, and you need to work out which bits you like of it. Okay, so if you like the thump of your acoustic bass drum, then you get the front of house guy, the sound guy, to take off everything at the top and everything at the bottom, so you've just got the thump. Okay, then you pick a sample which has got lots of smack, lots of attack, and lots of bottom end, real low bottom end, and you do exactly the opposite for that. You take out the thump in the middle, so you have the impact from the electronics, you have the thump, the thud from the acoustic bass drum, and you have low end rumble from the electronics as well. So to be technical, you do a high pass and a low pass on the acoustic bass drum, and you do a mid scoop on the electronic bass drum, and then combine it, jiggle it about a little bit, and you should have the world's biggest sounding bass drum. It will sound fantastic. So Topher, good luck with that. That sounds great. I'd love to hear the results. So yeah, that's brilliant. So yeah, that's using triggering on top of your acoustic kit for live. Brilliant.
To get a little extra welly.
A little bit of extra
welly. Did I say
welly.
that right?
Yes. Is that? I'm guessing that's a very British expression.
First time hearing it from me.
Yeah, we always say that when we drink our tea at 4 o'clock.
Little extra welly. I like it.
Absolutely. Okay.
So Simon, do we have? Am I correct that you have 2 or 3 additional of the pre-submitted questions from our users?
Well, actually, because I've sort of combined quite a few together, I've got one left from the original one. So if you've got any more questions there, then
I might have one more additional one after you get this next one here.
Okay, right. So this is a big question. This is a really, really big question. So this is the question. Can you recommend the best budget amplifier that will give me decent sounds from my DTX 402, nothing too expensive? And I think that was Paul, wasn't it? Was that Paul? Yes, that's Paul Stewart. Right. Thank you, Paul, for the question. I might make a few enemies here. Okay. This is a really difficult one. Okay. What happens? Not what happens. No, I'm going to take that back. There's two things which are really expensive when it comes to drums, acoustic and electronic. One is making an acoustic kit quiet. Okay. Making a soundproof room is really expensive. Okay. Very expensive. The next thing is making an electronic kit really loud. That's really expensive as well to get it done really well. So the short answer is it's not cheap, but you can do, depending on how big a room you want. If you've got, if you just want to play at home, then Yamaha's MS monitors, absolutely perfect. But they're not going to be powerful enough to do a gig down your local bar, pub, whatever else. But for home use, absolutely perfect. And they sound great. When it starts getting to somewhere where you need your electronic drum kit, to be as loud as your acoustic drum kit, that's when it starts to be a little bit more tricky. If you think about your acoustic bass drum, it's a 22-inch bass drum, that acts like a 22-inch speaker. That moves a lot of air. That moves so much air. And to get a speaker which moves the same amount of air, so i.e. makes it just as loud, is going to be, it's not going to be cheap. So you need to get the best full range PA, so full range speakers with a tweeter, a mid range, and a bass speaker that you can afford. Is if you want to make it loud. If you just want it for home use monitoring, then the Yamaha's MS system, perfect. But if you want it to be as loud as an acoustic kit, then you need your own small PA system. So I don't really know where you're playing, what you need to do. So, but that's what I would say. It's not just a matter of going to buy a guitar amp, plugging a speaker in, plugging the kit into the speaker and playing. Guitar amps sound rubbish for electronic drums, and electronic drums tend to kill the speakers. Bass amps sound slightly better, but again, the amps can't handle the big impact when you play the bass drum hard. So it's a little bit tricky. But that's my suggestion. If it's small, Yamaha's MS systems, and then if it's slightly bigger, you need to get a small PA system. Okay? Sorry, that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but I've got to be honest.
I think that actually answers it, perfectly, and I think that's a good point because, Paul in that question was saying for his DTX 402, very possibly could be for just a home use, type setting, and actually that was the question that I wasn't sure if I had submitted to you ahead of time. That was the question that I was going to bring up because. My answer to that would have been to what you just said, the MS45DR. For a home use situation, quality sound, clarity, good, because there's a woofer component to it, provides great, bottom end. But depending on the application, it's not necessarily the right choice that you would, go to a venue or a live, a live setting. But for, a budget speaker, for home use is terrific. So
absolutely.
I think that's good information, which is actually a really good tie-in to one of the final points that I was going to make for the day. That timing worked out good. Is we did want to have a bit of a draw prize as part of our presentation today. We wanted to to encourage people to reach out and submit their questions, and that draw prize is an MS45DR amp system. So I did want to make mention that in our previous attempts at getting this webinar done, that everyone who did submit a question was going to be automatically entered into a Yamaha Canada draw for a MS45DR. So we have everybody's information. Thank you everyone for submitting those questions, and that draw will be done later today, and we will be making contact with our winner tomorrow, and we will reach out to make sure that we get one of those units to one of those winners, or to that winner. So that tied in well.
I've got to say that wasn't actually planned that
No,
way.
it wasn't.
It was just it's pure chance
I know.
that happened to be the last question, which is yeah. Anyway, but that works out. That works out very well. So yes. So yeah, cool.
That is great, Simon. So I think we did touch on if there was one or two questions, we've got them all submitted. Our time, we hit the time goal for today. I will absolutely be looking over if there were any additional questions that were submitted. I will get those to you, and you did say that you were open and dedicated to sending a reach out or an answer to these people, because we do have contact information, so I will make sure to do that. Was there anything in closing that you wanted to impart on the viewers? You said you were open to providing some additional contact info?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got any questions about DTX or anything like that, you can get hold of me at simon@edruminfo.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And I can send you, depending on what questions you've got, I've got lots of PDFs that I can just mail back instantly, which hopefully will answer most of your questions. So we can do that. So reach out to me, simon@edruminfo.com, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I possibly can.
And I would encourage people to do that. And I would absolutely instruct people, if there is a certain task or function that you need assistance with, whether it be as part of the DTX series, if you're a previous owner, the DTX Pro module, the DTX Pro X module found on the DTX 10 series. Simon has posted a ton of content online that you can find him on YouTube. A lot of those videos are kept on the Yamaha official YouTube channel, and they're all broken down into minute to 3 minute little videos on direct tasks, how to layer a sample, how to eliminate crosstalk. There's lots and lots of stuff out there. So yeah, please everyone, make sure you seek Simon out and reach out to him on email. But Simon, I wanted to thank you for your diligence and help in getting this done, in being receptive to having these specific questions be submitted, and answering them to the best of your ability. We really appreciate you taking the time, and it's been a pleasure.
No problem. Well, thank you, Ryan, and also thank you to Brent, who's in the background doing all the technical stuff.
Absolutely.
Who we haven't seen. No, and also thanks to everyone for asking questions, because that's the hardest thing is saying, ask me a question, and everyone goes, I don't know, but I've been sent loads. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Yamaha Canada for doing this. And I'll hopefully see you very soon with something else, I hope.
I hope so. There's hopefully other opportunities in the future. New products, this format might even be something that we consider to do down the road if there's interest. And again, the whole idea was to provide a platform for customers to get direct information from professionals and people who know the correct answer. So this could very well be something that we look to do again in the future, and I would certainly be open to that.
Brilliant. So would I. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. So that is everything that we had for today. We covered our questions. I want to thank again everyone at home tuning in, all of the people that did submit questions. Thank you for taking your time out. Hopefully we were able to provide some answers for you. So that is everything we had today. Thank you very much, and we will see you guys soon. Take care.